I always thought family meant unconditional love and support, until the night my parents locked me out of my childhood home during the worst blizzard Minnesota had seen in decades. I'd driven 8 hours through a snowstorm for my father's retirement party, 8 hours of rehearsing what I'd say when I finally saw them again after 5 years of silence, 8 hours of clutching a document that would change everything. What my parents didn't know was that their perfect home, the one they'd used to control me my entire life, had legally been mine for the past 3 months, and I was done being the family doormat. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or wondered what it would be like to finally stand up for yourself when everyone expects you to back down, stick around. This is the story of how I reclaimed not just a house, but my entire sense of self. And trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever wanted to prove everyone wrong about who you really are. Growing up in Minneapolis, the Fletcher name carried weight. My father, Richard Fletcher, built his accounting firm from scratch into one of the most respected in the Midwest. Our colonial-style home in Edina was the envy of the neighborhood. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and a perfectly manicured lawn that my father inspected with military precision every Sunday morning. My mother, Diane, served on every community board and charity committee possible, her social calendar dictating the rhythm of our household. And then there was me, their only daughter, their disappointment. From an early age, I understood that appearances mattered more than anything in the Fletcher household. My brother, James, 3 years older and clearly the favorite, could do no wrong. Captain of the hockey team, straight-A student, and eventually Dad's right-hand man at Fletcher Financial. I was the artistic one, the dreamer, the one whose report cards prompted sighs rather than celebrations. I remember my high school graduation party vividly. Mom had invited half of Edina, colleagues, neighbors, church friends, transforming our backyard into something from a Minnesota lifestyle magazine. I'd been accepted to Rhode Island School of Design with a partial scholarship, my dream school for photography. When Uncle Mike asked about my plans during dinner, I excitedly shared the news. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. "Emma's going to the University of Minnesota for business," he announced, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "This art school nonsense is just a phase. No daughter of mine is wasting 4 years on a hobby." I can still feel the heat that rushed to my face as guests awkwardly returned to their conversations. Later that night, I overheard Mom telling her sister, "We're just being practical. Creative types end up serving coffee to people with real degrees." Despite their opposition, I went to RISD. They refused to contribute a penny, so I worked 2 jobs while maintaining my scholarship. Those 4 years of near independence were the happiest of my life. I made real friends, developed my portfolio, and even had my work featured in a small gallery show. I called home every Sunday, desperately seeking some acknowledgement of my achievements. The conversations always circled back to James's promotions or Dad's expanding client list. After graduation, with student loans crushing me, I reluctantly returned to Minnesota. Dad offered me an administrative position at his firm. "Until you find something real," he said. 5 years I spent in that beige cubicle, watching my creative skills atrophy while James was groomed for leadership. 5 years of Sunday dinners where my ideas were dismissed with polite smiles or outright ridicule. The breaking point came during the infamous Thanksgiving of 2018. I'd secretly been building a photography business on weekends, specializing in corporate headshots and events. I'd finally saved enough to put a deposit on a small studio space downtown. When I announced this over turkey and cranberry sauce, expecting perhaps grudging support, Dad laughed. Actually laughed. "Photography? Still? Emma, you're 30 years old. It's time to grow up and accept that not everyone gets to follow their passion. Some of us have to be practical." Mom added, Honey, we're just worried about your future. What about health insurance, retirement? You've always been so impulsive. James, ever the peacemaker when it suited him, chimed in with the worst kind of support. Maybe she could take headshots for our clients, Dad. We could throw her some work. I left the table, packed my car, and drove to my apartment in tears. 3 days later, I received a job offer from a marketing agency in Chicago. I accepted without hesitation and moved within 2 weeks, leaving only a brief note for my parents. The silence between us began that day. For 5 years, I built a life in Chicago. My photography career flourished as I specialized in architectural imagery, eventually landing contracts with major design firms. I bought my first condo, made true friends, even adopted a rescue dog named Pixel. The only contact from Minnesota came through occasional texts from James or Christmas cards from Mom addressed formally to Ms. Emma Fletcher. Then came the certified letter that would change everything. My maternal grandmother, Nana Ruth, had passed away at 92. We'd always been close. She was the one family member who defended my artistic pursuits, who sent me $50 checks during college with notes saying, "For film and coffee, not books." What I never expected was that Nana Ruth had secretly purchased my parents' house years ago when Dad faced business troubles, letting them believe they'd simply refinanced. And in her will, she left the property to me. The lawyer's letter was clear. I now owned the house my parents had lived in for 30 years, the house they'd used as a weapon against me. If you don't study business, don't expect to inherit this house someday. The house that represented everything I'd been told I couldn't achieve on my own. I could have sold it from afar. I could have evicted them with formal notice. Instead, I decided to attend Dad's retirement party, the celebration of his legacy that the entire community would witness. I made arrangements for time off, packed a small suitcase, tucked the property deed into my coat pocket, and headed north as the snow began to fall. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks earlier, a cream-colored card with gold embossing announcing the retirement celebration of Richard Fletcher, founder of Fletcher Financial. It wasn't addressed to me directly. James had forwarded it with a posted note. Mom and Dad are too proud to ask. Please come. Included was a handwritten schedule of the weekend's events, culminating in a catered dinner for 50 at the house. I'd checked the weather forecast obsessively the week before my drive. The blizzard warnings had started as potential winter weather event before escalating to severe winter storm warning by the time I left Chicago. Still, I pressed on, stopping twice to let Pixel out and to call James. "Are you sure they know I'm coming?" I asked during our third call. "Yes, Em. Mom's even preparing the guest room," he assured me. "Just drive safe. This storm is getting serious." I arrived 2 hours later than planned. The normally 6-hour drive stretched to 8 by deteriorating road conditions. The Fletcher house glowed through the swirling snow, windows illuminated and cars already lining the driveway despite the weather. I recognized the Andersons' SUV and Dr. Michael's luxury sedan, Dad's oldest clients and friends. My hands trembled as I pressed the doorbell, stamping my feet against the cold. No answer. I rang again, longer this time. Through the frosted glass panels, I could see figures moving, hear the muffled sounds of conversation and clinking glasses. I tried the handle, locked. Finally, I called James. "I'm outside," I said when he answered. "No one's coming to the door." "What? Hold on." I waited, watching my breath form clouds in the frigid air. The temperature had dropped to -15, and the wind chill made it feel twice as cold. After 5 excruciating minutes, the doors swung open to reveal not James, but my father. Richard Fletcher hadn't changed much in 5 years.
still trim and imposing at 65, silver hair perfectly coiffed, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. What had changed was the look in his eyes when he saw me. There was no warmth, no relief, not even anger, just cold assessment. "Emma," he said, his voice as icy as the air between us, "this is unexpected." "James said he told you I was coming," I replied, already sensing something was wrong. Dad's jaw tightened. "James tends to make assumptions. This is a private event for clients and close family." The words hit like a physical blow. Close family. After 5 years, I was still on the outside. "Richard, who's at the door? You're letting all the heat out." My mother appeared behind him, champagne flute in hand. She froze when she saw me, her practiced society smile faltering. "Emma decided to surprise us," Dad said, not moving from the doorway. Mom recovered quickly, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, well, this is quite a night for it. We're in the middle of the client appreciation cocktail hour." She glanced nervously over her shoulder.
"Perhaps you could come back tomorrow for the family brunch?" I stood there, snow accumulating on my shoulders, my car already developing a thick white blanket behind me. "Mom, there's a blizzard. I just drove 8 hours to get here." "There's a Holiday Inn off the highway," Dad suggested, as if this were the most reasonable solution. "We can catch up properly tomorrow when we don't have guests." Before I could respond, James appeared in the hallway behind them. His face registered shock, then dismay. "Emma, you made it!" He pushed past our parents. "God, you're frozen! Come in, come in!" Dad placed a firm hand on James's shoulder. "Your sister was just leaving. She's going to check into a hotel and join us tomorrow." "What? No, that's insane! The roads are terrible!" James looked between us in confusion. "I told you she was coming." "You mentioned she might come for brunch on Sunday," Mom said quietly. "This is Richard's special night with his colleagues. We have a certain image to maintain." The implication was clear. I didn't fit that image. The artistic daughter who'd rejected the family business, who'd moved away without a proper goodbye, whose absence had surely been explained away with carefully crafted lies. "I'll get my things from the car," I said woodenly, dignity being all I had left. "Emma, no," James started, but Dad cut him off. "That's probably best. We'll see you tomorrow." As I turned to leave, I heard a familiar voice call from inside. "Is that Emma Fletcher? Good heavens, let the girl in! I haven't seen her since she was taking those marvelous photographs at the club." Mrs. Winters, my mother's oldest friend and the biggest gossip in Adana, appeared in the hallway. Other faces peered curiously from the living room. I recognized the sudden panic in my mother's eyes, the fear of what people would think if they turned away their only daughter during a blizzard. Dad, however, had made his decision. "Emma was just dropping something off. She has other plans tonight." The door closed in my face. I stood there, stunned, as the wind whipped around me. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "I'm so sorry. Give me 10 minutes to fix this." But there was nothing to fix. The truth I'd been avoiding for years was literally staring me in the face, reflected in the cold glass of the door my father had just closed. I would never be enough for them. I returned to my car, turned on the engine for warmth, and reached into my pocket. The property deed felt heavy in my hands. Through the windshield, I watched as the party resumed, silhouettes moving behind curtains, oblivious to the fact that the woman sitting in her freezing car in their driveway legally owned the roof over their heads. My phone rang. James again. I silenced it. Then my mother called. Then my father.
I watched the notifications stack up as I sat there, formulating a plan. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd shut the door in my face, and now they were desperately trying to reach me. Not out of concern, but out of fear for their reputation. What would the neighbors think? As the snow continued to fall, I made my decision. I wouldn't slink away to a hotel. I wouldn't pretend this hadn't happened. For once in my life, I would force the Fletchers to face the consequences of their actions. I had the deed. I had the power. And tomorrow, at the family brunch they'd so graciously invited me to, everyone would learn exactly what that meant. I spent the night at the Holiday Inn Express off I-494, barely sleeping as I rehearsed what I would say. By morning, the blizzard had passed, leaving behind 2 feet of pristine snow and crystal clear skies. I dressed carefully. Black slacks, emerald green sweater, the pearl earrings Nana Ruth had given me for my college graduation. Professional, polished, a woman to be taken seriously.
The family brunch was scheduled for 11 a.m. I arrived at 11:15, deliberately late. This time, when I rang the doorbell, the door swung open immediately. James stood there, relief washing over his face. "Thank God, I've been calling you all night." My phone died, I lied, stepping past him into the foyer. The house smelled of coffee and cinnamon rolls, Mom's special recipe, made only for important occasions. In the dining room, I could see the table set with the good china, fresh flowers arranged in the center. Mom appeared from the kitchen, aprons still tied around her waist. "Emma, we were so worried when we couldn't reach you." She moved as if to hug me, then seemed to think better of it. Last night was a misunderstanding. Was it? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Dad emerged from his study, reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. "Emma, glad you could make it." No apology, no acknowledgement of having turned me away during a blizzard, just that same authoritative tone he'd used my entire life. "Richard," Mom said pointedly, "don't you have something to say to Emma?" He sighed, removing his glasses. "Last night was unfortunate timing. We had important clients over, and your unexpected arrival created an awkward situation." "That's your apology?" James asked incredulously. "You locked her out in a blizzard." "I did not lock her out," Dad snapped. "I suggested she find accommodations more suited to the circumstances." I remained silent, watching this familiar dance play out, Mom smoothing things over, James playing reluctant mediator, Dad refusing to admit any wrongdoing, the roles we'd all played for decades. "Well," Mom said brightly, forcing a smile, "let's not dwell on unpleasantness. The Johnsons and Petersons will be here any minute for brunch. Emma, you remember the Petersons? Their son Ryan is recently divorced and doing very well at his law firm." Of course. Even now, she was trying to matchmake, to steer me toward a more acceptable life path. The doorbell rang. Mom hurried to answer it while Dad retreated to help James set up the mimosa station. I remained in the foyer, hand in my pocket, fingers wrapped around the folded deed. Within 15 minutes, the house filled with my parents' closest friends and their adult children, about 20 people in all. These were the inner circle, the ones who'd watched me grow up, who'd attended my dance recitals and high school graduation. They greeted me with exclamations of surprise and delight. "Emma Fletcher, we've missed you at the club functions. Your mother says you're doing something with computers in Chicago?" "Photography," I corrected automatically. "I run my own studio, specializing in architectural photography." Blank smiles, polite nods, quick changes of subject. Mom circulated with coffee, while Dad held court in the living room, recounting stories from his illustrious career. I watched from the periphery, invisible again, despite being physically present. James caught my eye from across the room and raised his eyebrows in question. I gave a small shake of my head. Not yet. Brunch was served buffet style. Mom's famous egg casserole, fresh fruit, pastries from Woolett Bakery. As everyone settled with their plates, Dad stood at the head of the table and raised his mimosa glass. I want to thank everyone for coming, both last night and this morning. 40 years building Fletcher Financial has been the accomplishment of my lifetime. Well, he chuckled, looking at James, that and raising this fine young man who'll be taking over the reins. Appreciative laughter, glasses raised. I set my fork down carefully. And, of course, Dad continued, barely glancing my way, it's nice to have Emma back for a visit. Perhaps she'll grace us with her presence more often now that I'll have time for family. More chuckles. Mrs. Peterson leaned over to pat my hand sympathetically, as if Dad's passive-aggressive jab was somehow charming. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the pleasant murmur of conversation, I'd like to say something. All eyes turned to me. Mom's smile froze. Dad frowned slightly. Emma, perhaps after brunch would be better for... I think now is perfect, I interrupted, standing. After all, we're celebrating transitions today, aren't we? I moved to the head of the table, opposite my father. The room fell silent. For those who don't know, I've spent the last 5 years building a successful photography business in Chicago, not playing with cameras, as my father likes to say, but creating award-winning work for major architectural firms and publications. I paused, letting that sink in. I've made a life for myself that I'm proud of, despite being told repeatedly that my dreams were impractical and foolish. Mom's eyes widened in alarm. Emma, this isn't the time. Last night, I continued, I drove 8 hours through a blizzard to attend my father's retirement party. When I arrived, he closed the door in my face and suggested I get a hotel room because I didn't fit the image he wanted to present to his clients. Shocked gasps. Mrs. Johnson's hand flew to her mouth. Mr. Peterson stared intently at his plate. That's not exactly, Dad began, but I cut him off. But here's what my parents don't know. I reached into my pocket and unfolded the deed, holding it up. 3 months ago, I received a letter from my grandmother Ruth's estate. It seems that 10 years ago, when Dad's business was struggling and this house was nearly foreclosed on, Nana Ruth purchased it outright. She let you believe it was a refinance, but she actually became the legal owner. I looked directly at my father. And in her will, she left this house to me. The silence was absolute. Mom's face had drained of all color. Dad stood frozen, mimosa halfway to his lips. So last night, when you locked me out, I was standing on my own front porch. I placed the deed on the table. I legally own this house. Every brick, every shingle, every piece of furniture you're sitting on belongs to me. James let out a low whistle. Someone, I think it was Dr. Michaels, muttered, "Good Lord." Dad's face had turned a dangerous shade of red. This is absurd. That can't be legal. It's completely legal, I said calmly. I've had 3 separate attorneys confirm it. The deed is clear, and Nana Ruth's will was properly executed. But why would Mother do such a thing? Mom asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She left a letter explaining that. Would you like me to read it to everyone, or would you prefer some privacy? Dad slammed his glass down. This is outrageous. You can't just walk in here and claim. I can, I said firmly, and I have. But don't worry, I'm not going to evict you today. Relief flickered across my mother's face, quickly replaced by wariness. I'm giving you 6 months to either purchase the house from me at fair market value or find somewhere else to live. I looked around the table. I apologize for disrupting brunch, but I thought it was important to be transparent, something this family has never been very good at. I picked up my purse, retrieved the deed from the table, and walked toward the front door. Behind me, chaos erupted. Exclamations, questions, my mother's tearful protestations. I paused in the doorway, turning back one last time. Oh, and Dad, congratulations on your retirement. The weeks following what James later dubbed the brunch bomb were a blur of legal conversations, tearful phone calls, and long overdue confrontations. I returned to Chicago the day after the brunch, leaving my parents to deal with the social fallout of my revelation. From what James told me, it was substantial, the Edina gossip mill working overtime to dissect every detail of the Fletcher family drama. 3 days after I left Minnesota, my mother called. It was the first real conversation we'd had in 5 years. "Why didn't you tell us privately?" she asked, her voice raw from crying. "Did you have to humiliate us in front of everyone?" "Would you have believed me?" I countered. "Or would Dad have dismissed it as another one of my impractical fantasies?" Her silence was answer enough. And honestly, Mom, after being turned away during a blizzard, I wasn't feeling particularly generous. She was quiet for a moment. "I should have stood up to your father. I've always should have stood up to him when it came to you." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the most accountability I'd ever heard from her. Dad, predictably, took a different approach. He had his attorney contact mine, challenging the validity of Nana Ruth's ownership and subsequent bequest. His case fell apart when my lawyer produced the original purchase documents, complete with Dad's signature acknowledging the transaction. He'd been so desperate to save face during his financial troubles that he'd signed papers without fully reading them, allowing Nana Ruth to save the family home while letting him believe he'd simply secured better financing. James visited me in Chicago a month after the brunch. We sat in my small but stylish apartment, Pixel curled between us on the couch as he filled me in on the aftermath. "Dad's reputation has taken a hit," he admitted, "not just because of the house situation, but because of how he treated you. Turns out, people have longer memories than we thought. Miss Winters reminded everyone about your photography exhibit at the community center's senior year, the one Dad refused to attend." "That was 10 years ago," I said, surprised. "Apparently, she always thought it was just terrible how your talents were dismissed." James smiled wryly. "Who knew the country club set had such strong opinions about supporting the arts?" We laughed, then fell into a comfortable silence. "I'm not taking over the firm," he said finally. I nearly spilled my wine. "What? But that's been the plan forever." "It was Dad's plan," he shrugged. "I'm good at the work, but I don't love it. Never have. I stayed because it was easier than finding my own path." He looked at me with newfound respect. "Not everyone has your courage, Em. What will you do instead?" "I've been offered a position with a nonprofit that provides financial literacy education in underserved communities. Less money, more meaning." I raised my glass. "To finding our own paths." The most surprising development came 2 months after the brunch. My father called. Not his lawyer, not a mediator, but Richard Fletcher himself. "I'd like to meet," he said stiffly, "in person. There are things that should be said face to face." We arranged to meet halfway between Chicago and Minneapolis, at a restaurant in Madison, Wisconsin. I arrived early, choosing a quiet booth in the back. When Dad walked in, I barely recognized him. He seemed smaller somehow, less imposing, the carefully maintained facade of success slightly cracked. He sat down across from me, hands folded on the table. For a long moment, he just looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in my adult life. "Your grandmother was always smarter than me," he began. in business and, it seems, in understanding what you needed. I waited, not willing to make this easy for him. I received a letter from her, he continued. Apparently, she arranged for it to be delivered to me after you received the deed. She explained why she left you the house. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. She wrote one for you, too. Her lawyer was supposed to include it with the deed. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and unfolded the letter written in Nana Ruth's elegant script. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, I've left this world, and you've discovered that you now own your parents' home. I imagine this has caused quite a stir. Good. Some families need a little shaking up. I've watched for years as your light was dimmed in that house. Your father, my son-in-law, is a good man in many ways, but he never understood your spirit. When I had the opportunity to purchase the house during their financial troubles, I knew exactly what I would do with it eventually. This house is not a punishment for your parents, nor is it simply a gift to you. It's a chance for healing. Your father built his identity around providing that home, around being the successful patriarch. By leaving it to you, I'm giving him the opportunity to see you, truly see you, as the capable, successful woman you've become. Use this power wisely, dear one, not for revenge, satisfying though that might be in the moment, but for resolution. Whatever you decide to do with the house, remember that its true value lies not in the property itself, but in the opportunity it presents to redefine what family means to all of you. All my love, Nana Ruth. I looked up at my father, tears blurring my vision. She was always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Yes, he agreed softly. Emma, I've spent my life believing that success looked a certain way, that there was a correct path to follow. I tried to force you onto that path because I couldn't imagine any other way to be secure and respected. He swallowed hard. I was wrong. Yes, I echoed. You were. Your mother showed me your website. Your work is, he searched for the right word, extraordinary. The way you capture light and structure, it's remarkable. I didn't allow myself to see it before. It was the first genuine compliment he'd ever given my photography. I felt something shift inside me, a knot of anger beginning to loosen. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he continued. I'm not even asking to keep the house. What I'm asking for is a chance to know my daughter, the real Emma, not the version I tried to create. 3 months after that meeting, I made a decision about the house. I didn't sell it to my parents, nor did I evict them. Instead, I worked with an attorney to convert the property into a trust that would provide transitional housing for young artists struggling to establish themselves after college. My parents would continue living there as property managers, mentoring residents and helping them navigate the practical aspects of creative careers. To my surprise, they agreed. Mom threw herself into the project with unexpected enthusiasm, using her social connections to secure donations and support. Dad, now fully retired, discovered a talent for helping young people create business plans and manage their finances. The first residents moved into the converted carriage house 6 months later, 2 photographers, a sculptor, and a writer. I returned to Chicago, to my thriving business and the life I'd built for myself. But I also began visiting Minnesota regularly, not just to oversee the trust, but to rebuild relationships with my family. Slowly, carefully, with professional help, we began to heal. Last Christmas, a full year after the brunch bomb, we gathered at the house, not as the perfect Fletcher family my parents had tried to project, but as flawed, complex people learning to accept each other. James brought his new boyfriend. I brought Pixel and my portfolio of recent work. Mom made her famous cinnamon rolls without once commenting on the calories. Dad asked thoughtful questions about my latest architectural shoot. After dinner, as we sat in the living room, Dad raised his glass. To Nana Ruth, he said, who knew exactly what this family needed. And to Emma, Mom added, who had the courage to deliver it. It wasn't perfect. We still had moments of tension, old patterns that threatened to resurface. But for the first time, the foundation felt solid, built on truth rather than appearances, on acceptance rather than expectations. As for the property deed, it hangs framed in the front hallway of what is now officially called the Ruth Fletcher Arts Residence, a reminder that sometimes reclaiming your power means using it to create something new rather than simply tearing down the old. It's been 3 years since that snowy night when I stood on the porch of what I didn't yet know was legally my house. 3 years of rebuilding, redefining, and rediscovering what family means to me. The journey hasn't always been smooth, real healing rarely is, but it's been genuine. The Ruth Fletcher Arts Residence has now supported 15 young artists, helping them bridge the gap between creative education and sustainable careers. My father, once dismissive of impractical dreams, now teaches financial management workshops specifically designed for creative professionals. My mother has become an unexpected but passionate advocate for arts education in Minneapolis public schools. And James? He's thriving in his nonprofit work and recently got engaged to his boyfriend with a wedding planned for next spring. As for me, I've expanded my studio to include a mentorship program for young photographers, drawing on my own experience of having to forge a path with little support. I still own the house legally, but I no longer see it as a symbol of power or rejection. Instead, it's become something far more valuable, a place of possibility. I'm not sharing this story to villainize my parents or to portray myself as some flawless hero who handled everything perfectly. I'm sharing it because I know so many of you have felt unseen within your own families, have had your dreams dismissed as impractical, have wondered if standing up for yourself would cost you everything. What I've learned is that sometimes the very thing you fear losing isn't what you thought it was at all. Sometimes challenging the status quo isn't about destroying relationships. It's about creating space for authentic ones to finally emerge. If my story resonates with you, I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. How have you navigated family expectations that didn't align with your true self? What unexpected turns has your journey taken? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories about finding your voice and creating the life you deserve, even when, especially when, others don't believe you can. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can hold isn't a property deed, but the courage to be exactly who you are.